Hello netizens, Michael Kamas here from the 5 Things Tech series, and I recently made an upgrade to the 5 Things infrastructure with a new Synology DS3018xs. And it's kind of a new product, and I haven't seen anything online about an actual unboxing, so I thought, what the heck, let's unbox it together. So, let's go. Alright, so we have a nice generic packaging in here. Let's pull this out of this larger box here. Get rid of that. Here we go. DS3018xs, high performance NAS built for growing businesses, or a one-man shop in my case. This is a 6-bay model. I'm actually going to populate it with what will open next, which will be all 10 terabyte drives. So it'll be a huge upgrade from my DS1512 Plus, which I've had for 4 years now. So let's open this portion up. Nice little note here about support. Always get support. Let's see, we have an insert here, and in the insert we have a bunch of cables. We've got Ethernet cable. We've got a power cable. That's good. And we've got another Ethernet cable. What this means is I could actually hook this up to a router, or maybe I can even team the jacks together so I can get increased throughput out of the box. We also have keys. In my case, this would keep my wife and the dog off of the storage. But for small businesses, obviously, being able to keep things locked would be very handy. And lastly, we've got some screws. Most likely these are for drives, to put drives in the carriers inside the Synology. Now we've got the unit, which is in a wrapper, as well as some foam. So let's just flip this over gently so I can pull this out. Move some of this foam. Okay, so it's not too heavy, not too bad. As we open it up, I can see the expansion module here, which I'll go into later because actually I bought extra RAM too, so we can put that RAM in there. So let's take this off and flip the unit over. That new tech smell. Que bella. So, as we look at this unit, let's spin it around. Oh, don't forget the... Oh, it's a promotion. It's to buy a router. Great. I was hoping it was going to be a manual, because one of the things I always like to tell people is RTFM, or read the fucking manual. Or as tech people like me call it, manufacturer's recommendations or suggestions on how tech should be put together. So, the unit. As you can see back here, we've got 4 Ethernet jacks here. This is one of the things I'm very happy about, that there's multiple Ethernet jacks, because actually what I want to do is team them together. So when I migrate data from the old Synology, which is about 20 terabytes, to this unit, which will have about 50 usable once I do a RAID formatting, that I can get the data off that unit to this unit. If I go over a single Ethernet jack, it's going to be about a 30-35 hour copy time. But if I can team the Ethernet jacks together from the old system to the new system through a switch, I can probably cut that time in half. So that's what I'm pretty excited about. We also have USB ports, which I believe are USB 3. So if I at some point wanted to hook additional storage, I can plug the additional storage into this unit, and that will allow me to expand the storage that this is being used. Now, it won't be managed, it'll just be viewable, but if I wanted to offload storage from another drive, or simply increase this easily, I can stick USB storage on here in a pinch. We also have an expansion port if you wanted to put other Synology units on top of this for that extra management layer. So that's pretty cool. And we have a single power supply here. That was one of the deterrents, or one of the things that I wasn't thrilled about. I wanted to have 2 power jacks because if one goes down, one can still run the unit. But again, this is more meant for smaller businesses or home NASs, which is what I'm using it for, in which case, they got to cut corners somehow to justify the lower price tag. So obviously one is gone. So if we spin the unit back around, you'll see that we have all the drive bays here. And obviously this is empty. When you buy these, it comes diskless. So what I'll do now is open up these other drives and actually put the drives in the sleds and then put the units, or put the drives in here and then fire it up. So next we have the RAM, and let's open that up. Will this require a knife? No, it's always better when things require knives. All right, so we have the RAM here. This is a 16 gig stick of RAM. Although I don't plan on using this to be a massive transcoding box, meaning streaming media, streaming 4K media throughout the household, or using it as a render node. I did want a little bit of horsepower because I want this to last between 3 and 5 years. That's traditionally what I budget for with technology, is I'd like it to last 3 to 5 years. The Synology 1512, which I have back there, I got 4 years ago, so it's right in that time to upgrade. So here's the RAM stick. I'll show the actual putting this in here and getting that ready to go. So now we'll start opening up all these drives, and like I mentioned, I have 6 of them to fill this up. Now, in the other Synology, the 1512 that I have, that has all 4 terabyte drives. But because those drives are about 4 years old, I don't want to populate the new one, the new Synology, with 4 terabyte drives. I want 10 terabyte drives. So I'm going to offload that media and then end up selling the old unit or using it as tier 2 storage. So the drives I went with are the 10 terabyte Iron Wolf NASs, and these are ones that are actually recommended by Synology. I think too often when people look into storage, they don't see what the manufacturer recommends in terms of drives, and this is the ones that I want. In a perfect world, if I was using this box in a heavy-duty environment, what I'd be doing is getting enterprise drives, and those are commonly called black drives, I think is what Western Digital uses, or the terminology they use. Now, the benefit of those, obviously, is there's a lower or a higher MTBF, or mean time between failure, so they don't fail as often. They're also meant to work in more demanding environments where, the temperature isn't controlled. And, for home offices, the temperature can fluctuate. So that kind of did give me pause to not buy those drives. But because this is primarily used as what we call bit bucket, just a big holding pen, I thought NAS drives would be okay. And because I'm going to do a RAID on this, that'll make my life a lot easier in case a drive dies. So 10 terabyte drives, actually pretty ugly. I guess I'm used to the more black approach to drives, but these are kind of silver all the way around. And it's obviously got the screw holes so I can put this into the drive sleds in here. So let's keep opening these, shall we? In case you were wondering what the model numbers were of these are Seagate ST100s VN0004s. Here you go if you want to take a look. There you go. Again, these are the ones recommended by Synology. You always want to follow the drives that the manufacturer sanctions because you don't want to lose performance, you don't want to have data loss, because you wanted to save $5 by going down to your local store and buying a drive. So while I'm opening these, I suppose I can share why I decided to go with a Synology. Well, as I mentioned, I'm a previous owner of a Synology. The 1512 Plus that I have is fantastic. And also the app store that they have. The apps you can download, install very easily. The user interface is fantastic through the web browser. And it just made everything easy to use, including unsupported channels, etc. What I also did, because I'm in the film and TV industry, is that quite often I will record things for the 5 Things Tech series in a very high resolution. It's usually 4K in ProRes 422 HQ. And I don't want to lug that around when I'm editing. So traditionally I will save that fat media on the Synology. I'll create lower res versions, often called proxies, and then edit with those. But then I got to tell the editing solution, hey, you need to relink to the high res before I output you. So quite often I will put the high res on the Synology and then relink to it when I'm done, so I don't have to carry all that data around with me. So having a Synology that can output or handle that kind of throughput is fantastic. I also decided on this because there's a port on here where I can have an expansion card. And the expansion card that I'll probably end up getting at some point will be a 10 gig card. So I can connect to this directly via a 10 gigabit connection, or I can buy a new router or switch that supports 10 gig, and that way my computer as well as my storage are all 10 gig, which, you know, is obviously 10 times faster than your traditional Ethernet connection. I'm going to flip the unit over and open the bottom compartment here. This is where you put the additional RAM in, and I got an additional 16 gigs of RAM to put in here. So I have a nice Phillips screwdriver here with magnetic head. That's always very important. Otherwise, you will drop the screws and never find them. So let's open this bad boy up and let's put the RAM in there. And as you can see in here, we're missing one stick, so we want to put that stick in there to fill up the missing the missing RAM slot. All right, now that the RAM's in there, we now need to put the drives in here. So I'm going to spin this around, and I'm going to eject the sled. And the sled looks like it has, in lieu of screws on the side, it looks like it has the tabs on the side. So I can pull these off, then slide a drive in. Obviously, we want to have the connectors facing out because it has to interface with the Synology. And I'm going to line the holes up on either side. And once those are lined up, I can then put the tabs back in. I'll put all these together, and then we'll jump on to the next portion. All right, so we've got all 60 terabytes installed. Next thing we're going to do is get this on the network so we can not only configure it, but then start migrating the data from the old Synology to the new Synology across the network. So let's get started. We've got the older DS1512 Plus that is dual connected to the switch. We also have the newer DS3018xs, which is quad connected to the switch, again, so we can copy media from the old Synology to the new Synology quicker. The switch also has an uplink which goes to our literal house network, so I can get into it from my computer to then configure it, not only to format the new system, but also start the copy from system to system, as well as obviously teaming the connections together. So thanks for tuning in, and I'll see you on the net.